What do I mean when I say that in the end the path is no path? What I mean is when you begin, there may be a necessity or a requirement or a need to follow some steps in order to see who you are. For most of us, we're not encouraged when we're young, especially from my generation and even older generations, to follow who we are, but we're more encouraged to follow who we think we are, or to follow the intellect, or to follow a job, or to follow money, and it's a little less about who are you really. I mean, search it out. Who are you really? I didn't get a lot of advice like that. I did get a little bit, but it definitely wasn't the focus. It was more like, what do you want to be when you grow up, as opposed to who are you really? And so, in the beginning, that can be confusing for a person, and to just say, well, there's no path, so just see how that goes. That might be a difficult road to walk. So you may need to follow some steps or some guidelines in order to see who you are. The challenge is to recognize that following steps and guidelines is not the point. Let's say, for example, that you're going to bake a chocolate cake, and you've never baked a chocolate cake before. Maybe you've had a taste of chocolate cake, maybe somebody you know has baked a chocolate cake, but now you are going to be the one baking the chocolate cake. So you may need to follow a recipe, but you recognize that following a recipe is not the point. The point is to bake a chocolate cake. So you follow the recipe, and let's say you do a great job the first time. Well, isn't that wonderful? Hopefully along the way you learn something about baking a chocolate cake so that the next time you go, you don't have to pay such close attention to the recipe. Or maybe you do a terrible job. Maybe it turns out more like a pudding than a cake. And so you go, okay, well, I'm going to try this again. Or maybe you decide, maybe I'm not cut out for making chocolate cake, and so you decide to do something else. But the idea is, by repeating and repeating and repeating something, following the recipe, eventually you'd be able to make a chocolate cake without any outside influence. In fact, you would become so well aware of what it takes to make a chocolate cake that you'd start to make chocolate cake creations of your own. In fact, you may even start to explore other areas of baking. And really, this is how a meditation practice or lifestyle works as well. It's you start to do some techniques where you see who you are. So the goal of yoga and meditation, those of you who have listened to my work or have been watching the videos, following what we do at Dharma Temple, the goal of yoga and meditation is mental clarity, plain and simple. And say you go to a yoga class and the yoga teacher says something like, if you would like to make progress, or if you would like to advance in the posture. Well, that's a tricky statement, because in order for you to make progress in yoga, that teacher wouldn't be able to tell by whether you were doing an advanced yoga posture or not. By advanced, I mean like whether you looked like you were in Cirque du Soleil or not. That isn't how it works. In order for them to tell if you are making progress in your yoga practice, they would have to notice things like, is this person really listening? Is this person having a deep internal experience? What is this person's energy like after the class? I mean, that's how you could tell if the person was making progress as far as it goes. So let's say now, for the chocolate cake analogy, that you're looking to see, is this person following the steps to have an experience of mental clarity? Well, it may take a long time, and be much more challenging than making a chocolate cake, because that person may not learn anything about following a recipe for years and years and years. And that definitely was my case. I was fumbling around it with steps 1 and 2 for years and years, or steps 3 and 4 in the recipe, for example, out of 12 or something to that effect. And so the idea, I think I'm being clear here, that you see how having a path will start to make things come to life. You learn a bit about baking, you learn a little bit about the ingredients, you learn how they fit together, you learn a little bit about time. It's a great analogy for understanding the path part. But eventually, if you feel called to be a baker, which is in this case, if you feel called to be a meditator or a yogi, which I think is a essential for a human being in some way to find some mental clarity so that they can see who they are and apply it to whatever they do for work. Whether you're a tattoo artist or a scientist or a mother or a principal in a school or whatever it is, if you have some mental clarity to do your job, ultimately you improve the quality of your life. And by repeating and repeating and repeating, you start to see, oh wait, it's not about putting my feet on top of my head in a yoga posture. Oh wait, it's not about quoting scripture really well. Oh wait, it's not about how long can I sit cross-legged with my eyes closed. In fact, there was one great Zen master. He was the one who made the koan, it's kind of like a riddle or an unanswerable question that is meditated on, sometimes for years and years, to bring an experience of meditation. His teacher wrote 100 responses to koans, and when he became the teacher of the community, he burned all of the responses. And the reason he burned all the responses is because this isn't the point. The point isn't to focus on the steps. The point is to use the steps to see who you are and then leave the steps. I spoke in a previous video about the concept of a raft to cross the river. You use the raft to get across the river and then you leave the raft behind. Or in Zen they talk about the finger pointing at the moon. You know, the techniques are the finger pointing at the moon, but the whole purpose of the practice is to recognize you are the moon. Once you have some understanding that you are the moon, you're able to carry yourself in a way that you're meditating all the time without any effort. And that's really what I mean by the path is no path. If you'd like to take up a simple meditation technique, which I've shared on my personal Instagram, which is Tiaga Prem, Tiagaprem, you can follow me there. You could do this simple meditation. I recommend doing it for 1 week. You could do it for longer, or you could try it for 1 day. And I recommend doing it for 25 minutes. You could also do it for less time, but I found 25 minutes is a great way to explore it. And all you would do in this meditation is sit with a nice straight spine and close your eyes. Feel your belly rising and falling as you're breathing. And then begin to ask yourself as you are exhaling, okay, but who are you really? As you exhale. And then as you inhale, just let anything arise. And then the next time you exhale, ask yourself again, but who are you really? And then when you inhale, let whatever arises arise. And keep doing this for 25 minutes. And you may move through all kinds of things, you know, your role in society, your role in your family, the physical composition of the body, the cells, the muscles, the bones. You may even go beyond that and broaden the scope, you know, the stars, the ocean, all the animals interconnected. But you just keep asking the question, but who are you really? But who are you really? But who are you really? And eventually you realize all the things that you think are you are only relatively you. And when you start to widen the lens so wide that you see who you really are in relationship to all of this, any kind of path or identity or belief system or you must behave this way because starts to dissolve. And in that, there's freedom, which ultimately is the end goal of meditation, yoga, any sort of practice like this. So I hope that makes sense to you. I hope that you don't believe for a minute that, you know, imagine that I said to you, oh, you like music? You must only listen to heavy metal. You must only listen to reggae, and that's the music. That would be absurd, and there are people out there trying to do that. Same with yoga. You want to practice yoga? You must only listen to one teacher and only one path. That also is a bit absurd. You know, perhaps you only want to make chocolate cake. You're not interested in other types of baking. So you could follow one recipe, or you could follow one baker who you really love the way they make chocolate cake. But ultimately, if you want to find yourself free in the kitchen to create whatever you like, my recommendation would be to master that one recipe and study many recipes along the way. Sat Nam. Thanks for listening. Take care.